Hello and welcome to the Paranormal TV podcast, the podcast that asks for a chip coffee and gets handed a hot beverage in a broken mug.
What?
There's some stuff to unpack there.
Yes, there is.
Do you know if I was to say to you chip coffee, do you know what that is in reference to?
No, not right now. I might do in a minute.
So chip coffee is it's a person, it's a man.
Right.
He is a spiritual medium, and you will know who he is eventually if you've never seen him in any paranormal TV shows, anything that you've seen in the past. I'm assuming at some point in the future we will come across him, and I can't wait for you. I can't wait for that day to happen.
Chip coffee.
Chip coffee, literally chip coffee.
Right. Is that his name?
That's his actual name, yeah.
Wow.
And so he's a spiritual medium. So if we ever watch a show called Kindred Spirits. I've never
watched that show, actually. I've never watched it.
I've seen a few episodes. It's something we should probably watch in future.
Yeah.
It's a good show. It's a good paranormal investigation show. Better, I will definitely say, than what we had to watch for last week's episode, which had zero evidence or any kind of investigation in for Bigfoot.
Literally. Wasn't great.
But yeah, chip coffee is actually the reason why I have... So my number one sort of bucket list thing that I want to do with my life before I die is visit every single US state. And that became like a bucket list thing for me because I saw on Chip Coffee's Instagram that he had done that.
Oh.
So yeah, he had been on every single
cool.
US state, and so I was like, yeah, I want to do that as well.
Pretty cool. Here's something that we were talking, that's something we'd like to do, but there's some states that I probably wouldn't want to go to.
Oh, there's some states that I literally will pass through.
Avoid.
There's one point in America where 4 states come together, and you can literally in 4 different steps step on all 4 different states.
Ah, so that's easy. One day job.
One day job, do all 4 states. I can't remember which ones they are.
Done. Really do.
Talking of US states, there's something I wanted to actually say, because obviously we've been doing this podcast now for a couple of weeks, and it's nice to watch the analytics kind of rolling in and seeing it growing. We are, in the grand scheme of things, still a teeny tiny little podcast, just 2 friends sitting and chatting about ghosts and shit. But what I will say, and when I say there are some states that I won't want to spend an extended period of time at, I wouldn't mention which states they are on here.
No.
Largely because we might have listeners there. Because some exciting news is that when I get the analytics through, it tells me where people are listening. So I just want to, and what is this now, episode 4, episode 5, whatever it is, I just want to say a big shout out to everybody listening in the United Kingdom, which is, we kind of expected that anyway because friends and family listen, and
yep.
I listen to it as well.
Yes, I listen.
just to give us an extra little download every week. Everyone in the United Kingdom, the United States, Switzerland, Australia, France, Mexico, and Portugal.
Wow, we've reached that far.
We've reached that many countries.
Oh, cool.
So if you are any one of the one person
in each country
that is listening in Australia, France, Mexico, or Portugal, let us know who you are.
And thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you so much.
It means a lot.
It does mean a lot for two friends in a little town in the northwest of England.
That's it. I know. Did you know that when we do musical theatre, just adding that one in there?
Just shoehorn that straight in there. Also, anyone that does understand any of my podcast openers, before before I have to explain them to Chloe, let us know as well if you understood what that was. So, this week.
This week. It was a good one this week. So, this week we're focusing on Alton Towers. Now, I am 1,000% sure that 95% of the people in the UK, if they listen to this, have heard of or have been to Alton Towers. But for people that obviously aren't aware of Alton Towers, it is a theme park based in Staffordshire in the UK, just outside a little town called Alton, if you would believe it.
That makes so much sense.
So, it's actually a really nice drive when you drive through there, but back on task.
Oh my God, did you ever... Sorry to interrupt. Did you ever go on a school trip to Alton Towers?
No, we never did. My school never, until we left, never. Everyone else's high schools went on school trips to Alton Towers. We never did.
Yeah, we did every year. And it was really nice that you just said Alton is a really lovely little town. It's a lovely little village that you drive through to get there. When you are driving through on a coach with 70 teenagers, it becomes a little bit less... I had heard, I don't know how true this is, apparently the people who live in Alton get free annual passes to Alton Towers, basically to say sorry for all of the traffic, the tourists and the traffic that come through every single day. But yeah, it was just when you just said then, it's a really nice little town, until you have like 150 coaches full of 70 to 80 children each, which they probably get
daily in one go as well, because people literally do trips all the time. But yeah, so we are focusing on Alton Towers this week, and I just find it interesting because for me, and obviously we'll get on to the episode in a minute, but I've always found Alton Towers to be an extremely freaky place. I always have. I've had a weird feeling every time I've been there. I've never had anything happen, I will openly admit that, but I've always said it is a weird place. It gives me the creeps a bit. It has a weird atmosphere.
Gives you eerie. The heebie-jeebies.
Eerie is the word I would use. Eerie. Because obviously the Towers sits on a legend which is based around an oak tree, which you can actually go and visit in Dimmingsdale, which is between the town of Alton and Staffordshire. And it is still there wrapped up in chains. Now, the reason it was chained is because many years ago, the 15th Earl of Shrewsbury was cursed by a beggar woman because she was asking for help, and he just was like, off you go, out the way. And she put a curse on his family that every time a branch would fall of the old oak tree, a member of the family would die. And they were like, nonsense. Anyway, the night they got home, there was a huge thunderstorm, and one of the family members died. And it kept happening. So
because the thunderstorm had knocked a branch off the tree.
Because he went insane, and in the end he dragged the tree to the forest, which is why it's where it is, and chained it up.
I didn't realise you could do that.
No, I didn't either, but there you go. He dragged it
like a child with a tantrum.
But I
grabbed it by its ear.
I don't think he dragged the whole tree. I'm going to be quite honest. I think he just dragged like a trunk, because I'm sorry, that would be a flaw in the whole myth. Because
isn't the trunk the whole tree?
Well, that's what they say when you go on the ride. It says he dragged it to his lair, and having thought about it,
just like that.
That's how he talks on the video. Insert clip. And then I looked at the pictures and I was like, that tree is still standing with trunks in the ground, with literal roots in the ground. So he did not drag the tree.
There's every chance he could. Yeah, it probably wasn't dragged. There's probably a method that tree surgeons use to uproot them and then bring them to a different place and then reroot them.
Yeah. However, that's the story. I mean, there was many earls that lived there before him, all of which are people that haunt the towers. But this one specifically is probably one of the most haunting stories that's took place around and surrounding the towers and within the towers. And interestingly, just to add to it, people have actually said as guests and people who work there that they've experienced stuff in the queue line, which is the old armoury room for Hex.
Yeah, for Hex. I can honestly say I've never experienced it.
I've
done Hex. I've done Hex a handful of times.
Yeah.
I've never experienced anything in there. But what I will say as well is when you are in there are like 100 other people.
Oh yeah.
Queuing up for the ride. You know, people say, a stone got thrown at me. That could have been a little dickhead at the back of the queue just throwing it, and then just no one saw him. Just he's lying low. It's just
strange. It's just a strange thing, and that people have claimed to have seen Victorian children as ghosts in that area. I mean, no one ever goes as far as they went on Most Haunted, which is what we're talking about on the episode, to where they went, because obviously that's like you can't go that far because of obviously health and safety.
Yeah.
People only go as far as the queue. So, I mean, as always, it's an old building. It's been there for centuries. It's going to have a very eerie feeling to it. And it's interesting because that touches on what David Wells said and Dr. Kieran both said that when you've got an old house and then you put a creepy ride inside it, it gives you the perception that something scary is lurking within that castle, well, tower.
Yeah. And if you just look at the tower itself as well, it looks like, Dracula's castle. It looks like the sort of quintessential haunted house. You say to someone, draw me a haunted house, they draw something very similar to what is sort of standing there in Alton Towers.
Yeah, well, no spoilers, but it literally looks like the building that Monsters Unchained is in at Epic Universe. So there you go. That is the answer for that. That is terrifying.
Well, there you go. Maybe that's where they got their inspiration for it. They were like, for this massive new multi-billion-dollar theme park that we're opening in Orlando. Let's get our inspiration from a little town in Staffordshire.
Alton Towers. Yeah. So that was interesting. They said that from the get-go. And
yes.
I liked that they said that because we've always talked about the whole, if you know what's coming, then you're looking for it.
It's that preconception. It's the power of suggestion.
Yeah.
Something I'm always banging on about. Like I said, I talked about my sister last week having seen Voldemort in a woodland area, but it's only because her mind was on Harry Potter at the time. There's no way she saw Voldemort. Voldemort isn't real.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because Yvette obviously went the first night, so she goes there the first night. Who was she accompanied with?
That was with Kieran.
Oh, with Kieran. Yeah, it was just two of them.
I've written my notes. This is the first time I've done this. Sorry, this is admin. This isn't exciting for the listeners to listen to. I've written my notes in sections for this one. So I've actually written Yvette and Kieran spend the night alone, and then I've got some notes on that.
Yeah, most of mine is split off, but that happened so quick. It's not like that. But
yeah, it came out of nowhere. She was just talking about the thing, and she was like, "We spent the night alone in here."
And then we are.
Okay.
We are not doing it any longer because it was not nice.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to be fair, that was real. I felt like they were like, "Nah, this isn't for us. Let's come back in a bigger group." Fair enough, because scary.
Yeah.
And the building is huge.
That bit did feel a little bit more like, because obviously we'll get to it, but later on there are a lot more people there. Yeah. You've got all of the crew, you've got the medium, you've got her husband Carl, you've got the producers and stuff. When they were doing just the night alone, just the two of them, felt very much a lot more like Destination Fear, where it's just them and the camera, and that's the kind of show that I really love. Yeah, there's not loads of people. Yeah. To be creating all this potential extra noise, because. Yeah, we'll get to it later.
Because
I enjoyed the bit when they were just on their own.
Yeah, between the two of them, just in that moment, they had a loud rumble upstairs, which you could hear really clearly on the camera, which fed back, and they could feel the presence. And they even said it's a different experience at night to what it is in the day, because they were obviously talking about there's poltergeist activity within the Hex ride. which I don't think they could have gone in because of obviously health and safety and obviously being around machinery. And people have had obviously things thrown by unseen forces. But they then spoke about all of the sort of spirits that they know to be in there, which is a large man in and around the music room. That was how he was described.
Very vague.
A dark phantom, and they were the two that they mainly focused on. They didn't really talk about any others, but they just said staff and guest complaints about things being thrown, which we've already talked about. But apart from that, they were the only spirits that they could name.
Yeah.
That they knew were in the building. So that was interesting because obviously as we go through it, none of them were mentioned. And they were the only ones they were aware of before they started the hunt the second day.
Yeah. I will say on the when they were filming the first night, when it was just Kieran and Yvette, there was a point. It was before you heard the what I think Kieran described as door closing. It sounded like I've put it sounds. It's the sound a door makes when it opens and scrapes along the ground. That's what it sounded like to me, and it happened twice consecutively. That did freak me out, and I think I was freaked out because I really like Kieran O'Keefe.
Yeah,
he's a skeptic just like me, and he goes to these things just like I do with an open mind, but it's not an open mind, it's an ajar mind.
Yeah.
It's not not fully open, but when I see him react to something as though he is freaked out, then that makes me go, okay. Because I know for a fact that if something happens and he is freaked out by it, or if he is surprised or startled by it, I know it's not fake. Yeah. Because he didn't know about it.
And quite often throughout this episode, he was quite startled because it was an episode for me that it did make me go, ooh, a bit. Cause,
Oh, no, there were moments.
I mean...
There were moments when I think I wrote 2 or 3 times where I was startled by something.
I'll get to it. I have to tell you. I'll get to it. But starting when they were obviously walking around, they were talking about the lady in the long black dress. That had seen
also, I just had when he said that, I just had the song from Sister Act in my head. Hey, lady in the long black dress.
Literally, there you go. Another musical thing. This is very musical themed. But obviously, she was walking. There was a smell of strong perfume, which we know it can happen with spirits. Yes. And a staff member approached her, thinking she was a guest, and asked her to leave.
Yeah, like it's after hours. You need to
That's hilarious. And then she just apparently vanished, is how they described it.
Yeah,
just disappeared.
I wrote on the point of the strong smell of perfume, because that wasn't something that happened inside the episode. That was something that they were talking about. No, happens to it's one of like the common complaints from people. What I will say is. I always say that. I go, what I will say is, so I need to try and get out of that.
To justify it.
Yeah. What I wrote down is smell of strong perfume, but there are thousands of people walking through every day. It could just be that at least a handful of people per day will have overexerted fragrance.
But this was the members of staff after work though. So it wouldn't be they didn't say it was a lingering smell. It was a strong smell.
Did they specify it was after hours? I didn't remember.
Because that's why they asked her to leave, because she was wandering round.
Oh, of course, yeah.
An area she shouldn't have been in.
You shouldn't be here. Take your fancy dress off.
Yeah, and obviously then she fizzled out. But yeah, so then it was interesting because then they obviously started the proper search then, didn't they? And they started in the chapel. Mm-hmm. And David Wells spoke of a governess figure. And to me, what he was describing was this lady in the long black dress.
Well, he then didn't he? Because she said to him, what's she wearing? And he said, She's got a gown, it's black, and there's like a white ruffle.
But he wasn't there for that conversation that was had with the employee of Alton Towers that spoke about the lady in the dress. So I was like, that's interesting.
Yeah, I wrote a note on David Wells, just a general note. In this episode and in all episodes moving forward, I don't believe in psychics, so anything he says will be going right over my head, is what I said. And I understand when you say about he wasn't there for the conversation and blah, blah, blah. But then I also have written the note, are we under the impression that this psychic knew nothing about the place beforehand and is being told all of this information from the other side? Or are we allowed to believe that he could have done his own research on this really famous and well-documented site before coming on the show?
Yeah, fair enough
because
point.
I do know of instances where things like that have happened.
Yeah, because then they went on to the kitchen, which I actually found quite interesting, this being in there, because they had the thudding when he was talking and then the knocks. They said 2 for yes, 1 for no. So he asked them, are you safe? Are we in danger here? And they knocked 2 for yes.
Yeah.
He then asked how many spirits are here. They knocked 11 times, and it was very 1, 2, 3. It was, clear knocking. They said there were 3 people in the room. This is where I shit myself, because they panned to that woman in the corner when they were talking about a woman. I didn't even know she was there, and she was like a rabbit in the headlight. Oh my god, I cacked my pat. Honest to God, I was like, oh my god, who is that? And I realised it was just someone on the team, because I was so engrossed in it. Oh.
I'm just gonna send you something on WhatsApp. I paused the screen at one point because I wanted to read. They put like a caption at the bottom of the description. Screen, a description. So I was like, pause this here, and I will to read what it says, get the information. Yeah. And I paused it at just the perfect time that Kieran is in the background and only his eyes are lit, and I shat my pants. Very similar to what you just said. I'll send it through now.
I was quite on edge. Oh my gosh.
Could you see that face behind them? It's Kieran. It's Kieran.
Is it?
But fuck me. I was like, what on earth is that?
But I know what that bit was, and I was on pins at that point. So like, you're like, oh my gosh. But that's it. The thing is, it's like this episode, you're a bit like, oh, because there was so much going on all the time. Because But the only thing I had to say was, he got the name Elizabeth Ann, and then they sort of contradicted themselves, because it said on the caption Elizabeth Ann was a very popular name at that time. So that's...
Yeah. Can I tell you verbatim what I've written about that?
Go on.
So I've written Elizabeth Ann. What they wrote was, with such a common name and without a surname or specific date, we were unable to trace who this might be. And then I've put, they said it themselves. He plucked a random common name out of the air, something that psychics are known for. It's called cold reading.
Yeah.
It's very similar to if a psychic, say like Psychic Sally plays at the Lyceum Theatre, and she comes in, she goes, right, I'm getting a Margaret. It's one of those, it's a common older person's name.
Yeah.
The chances are someone in that audience of 250, 500 people or whatever has got a relative called Margaret who's passed on.
Yeah.
It's called cold reading.
Even I thought, okay, I don't think you know who they are, and it's 2 girls, but all I was interested in that bit was the knocking, and because that to me was some evidence that I could look at. And
the knocking was impressive. I thought the knocking was good.
Yeah, and then I'll be honest, I wrote the long gallery, but I'm gonna brush past it, because the only bit I have to say about that is Dr. Kieran brought it up at the very end because David Wells was describing exactly what was behind, or would have been behind, that doorway without knowing. And even at the end of the episode, he said, how could he know and describe it so well when he hadn't even been there himself?
But again, that information could very well just be on the internet.
Yeah, but I suppose
he
we don't know.
He could have just, and I understand. I know I've given myself this rule of not being allowed to say things are fake. I'm going to just adjust the rules slightly in saying things that happen in the moment on camera. I'm not going to say that they're fake. Like the knocking.
Yeah.
The knocking, very impressive, assuming it's not fake. And I'm not going to say it's fake.
No.
I'm not. But when it comes to psychic mediums, I'm going to withhold the right, my human right, to be able to say that I think it's very possible that any psychic who goes to any place can and has done some research on it.
Yeah,
probably.
That's fair. You know, because, I mean, then it sort of moved on a bit, and this is where Charles Talbot starts to become part of the mixed of spirits.
Yeah.
Because there's a knock behind him, and then he describes, obviously, someone showing just their eyes. Now, obviously, we didn't see that, but that's what they felt. But then it all kicked off in the armoury room. All of a sudden, the armoury gallery, something was thrown. Somebody was screaming witch, and
oh yeah, and he had to explain himself. He had to be like, I'm not a witch. I'm not a witch.
And they were talking about an invasion, which, I'll be honest, that made sense to me, because there are thousands upon thousands of people, when the park is open, invading that space constantly. Mm-hmm. And that's when I honestly put two and two together. If there is poltergeist activity, I would throw a stone at someone if they were in my space constantly. I'd be like, get out. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
That's where, so when they explained that, I was like, well, that's understandable why they're throwing stones then, because if there is poltergeist activity, then that's the exact reason as to why it would be happening, and it's always in that room where there's guests.
Yeah.
Because, and especially if it's kids, they'll be playing around, won't they, and whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I don't know, but then, I don't think I can say it.
Oh, you absolutely can, because I've written it down. I'm going to say it, and we can bleep it out if we need to.
Absolutely brilliant. I put lol, because what the heck? They were like, oh, and it was a word that was used in this. Honest to God.
Yeah. Can I just say, by the way, as soon as he said that, he was like, the ghost has just called me a and I was like. And I paused it, and I was like, I'm going to make a note on this, because... And I wrote this. I wrote, someone just called me a made me howl.
Love.
However, I did wonder if that would have lined up with the timeline. I assumed that word was of more recent origin. So I Googled it.
Yeah.
The earliest use of the word is the 1200s.
So it would have been.
Even Shakespeare was supposed to have used it.
Which they did comment about that, didn't they? They said it. Yeah.
And then I pressed play, and then Kieran explained. He was like, he would. And then I was like, I made this note before Kieran then went on to explain.
I know, because I was like, what? And then even I thought, oh, surely isn't a word that's been used in that day and age. But there we go, history lesson.
Because then, like immediately after what I'm calling gate, Yvette said, because they've been having like stones thrown, a couple of like the odd one here and there throughout this time before the C word was used. I don't know why I'm saying that now after it's already been said so many times. Yvette then says, come on, throw a stone, and immediately after she says it, a heavy, like something stone, a lot heavier than the other stones, has been sort of launched, and that did startle me.
It hit her as well. Yeah. Because I'll be honest, even I thought if that's crew throwing that, they wouldn't have aimed for her. They would have aimed around her, and they would not have thrown something of that size. It was literally like it looked like part of the wall actually, because it was like slate almost, and it looked really thick. Because I was like, and then they threw another one, and I was like, oh my gosh, because it was getting a bit much, and I was like, oh my gosh, and then my thing went to advert, and I had to pause and write some notes, but because then something touches Carl on his arm, but he said it was like someone had pushed him out of the way, and it was at the moment that this rock had launched across the room, so it was all a bit, everything was, but like I have to say, it goes on to the next about the seance, but David was saying that he had a feeling that this was all, they were waiting for something almost.
Yeah.
And there wasn't going to be a build. The energy was just going to gather and gather, and then they were going to strike. And I got where he was coming from with that, because it felt like they were like doing the odd bit, throwing a stone, but they weren't playing to the whole knock 4 times in that room. Whatever was in that room wasn't wanting to respond to any questions or be seen.
Was this in the seance room?
Well, it was in the same room, wasn't it? They decided to do a seance in there.
But they did the seance.
Yeah.
Did you hear the breath?
Yes.
I put sounds like someone exhales.
Yes. I put breath noise. Yes. And it sounded like a frustration, almost.
Like
Yeah. Like, and it was as they were, Carl had also again had a brush on his hand.
Yeah.
But now I'm talking about it, it builds up to something at the end for me.
I know what you're getting at.
Yeah. So it was, they just were targeting Carl a lot, and that's where I thought he's right in the sense of they aren't doing it now, but something's going to happen to somebody, and they're not safe anymore. And I didn't feel like they were in a safe environment during this whole seance.
Yeah.
The temperature had dropped as well, which is not always a great sign.
Yeah, but didn't Kieran O'Keefe also mention that yes, the temperature's dropped, but it's also like they filmed it in like October or something.
Yes,
and
and
it's the middle of the night, and there's windows.
None of the windows have glass
with no glass in.
Yeah,
so.
none of them have, because they're just blocked off, aren't they, for the ride? But then they obviously called the seance to a close, didn't they? After that, because it had just gotten a bit.
Yeah, and then at one point, Yvette said she heard a footstep.
Yes,
I did play it back 3 or 4 times. Turned the volume up. Had my sound cancelling headphones on. I couldn't hear a thing.
It was something. I just couldn't work out what it was. It was a sound of some sort, but it sounded more like, I don't know, like someone brushing up a wall than a footstep to me. Which it could have been, but in the moment for them, they only go off what it's a footstep. Do you know what I mean? They probably don't have the time to reflect on it like we do. Because I would be like that, it's a footstep, but it probably wasn't. When you watch it back, you panic.
Yeah, and that's the thing as well, is when you put yourself into that situation, your senses are heightened anyway. Yeah. And you're fully expecting everything to happen. So the tiniest little creak or the tiniest little ding or whatever will be magnified in your head.
Because it'd be interesting if there's anyone listening that's worked at Alton Towers, but I know that they do scare mazes.
I actually know someone that works there now.
In the towers? Have they done a scare maze in the towers?
I don't know. She's a performer. She
performs
there.
I know that they use the towers for scare mazes. They used to use the dungeon, the lower bit, but I don't think they're allowed to use that anymore. And they use the insides of it. So I would be curious to know if anyone working there has ever experienced anything, because if they're going to, they are, because it's dark, because obviously they're actors, and they're sometimes isolated in zones on their own for hours. And if Yvette Fielding was that terrified being with just one person, let me tell you, there is no way that you'd put me somewhere for hours on end on a day in there. No. So I'd just be curious, because if anybody's going to experience anything, they are the only people that have access, because they don't allow people to walk around the towers anymore at the minute.
Oh, okay.
So there isn't any recent investigations been done because it's been condemned, some areas, so no one's been in. So they will be the next point of call to know if something's happened. Because then they go on to be in the banqueting hall, and that's when David gets poked in the eye.
Yes. But coming at you here with my skeptic hat on, that's not evidence for me personally. It's a thing that he felt, but not something that was captured necessarily on camera. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like, for me, evidence is a sound, something visual. Like I said, I've said this before, something that someone feels and then describes back to you is not, for me, evidence. But he did look... He looked like he had been poked in the eye.
Yeah, he did. But again, I thought, oh, right, you know. But apparently it was a witch's trick to do that.
Yeah, he said that. It's not something I've heard before, but I've not really...
Yeah, because there is obviously the connection of the witch. And I am actually going to talk about the story about my brother here, because I find it weird.
Oh, this is exciting.
So, my brother was travelling from Derby on the train. Now, I went on the train line today to try and work out where this happened, but they seem to be changing the route currently because of some maintenance. So, unfortunately, I cannot work out. It just says Stafford, which doesn't help. So, I'm assuming it's going to be Uttoxeter or Stafford on that train line. Now, this is located near to the woods where the tree is obviously chained up, and this is where the event happened with the Earl of Shrewsbury and the beggar woman. Now, my brother still to this day doesn't understand what happened, why it happened, or what he just can't explain it. And he spoke to me about it while we were in the queue for Hex, because he was like, I need to tell you about something that happened to me a few weeks ago. So he was on the train, and he admitted he was like, I was tired. But he said, I wasn't this tired that I imagined this whole thing. He said that he was lying on the train, he was just chilled, not lying, was sitting, having like sort of relaxed head back. And he said all the lights went out on the train. Now, just to reiterate, me and my brother hadn't been to Alton Towers for about 2 years. It wasn't something that was on his mind. He definitely wasn't thinking about it. Because we sort of said that it'd been a while. And he said that all the lights in the carriage went out and a hooded figure got on the train. He said, I sort of shook my head and thought, oh, it's someone with their hood up. And then this hooded figure turned round and it was an old, like, haggard woman. And he said, right, he was trying to wake himself up. He couldn't wake himself up. And this old haggard woman was just still stood staring at just him through the glass in the train. He then was like, what's going on? And then the lights went back on and he watched this hooded figure get off the train. He then realised where he was and Googled it and realised he was very close to where this had all taken place in real time many years ago.
And just to reiterate, he wasn't on a station.
No, not when
so
she got on.
There was no way like just a person could have stepped on and then stepped off again.
No, they were stopped though in the middle of nowhere. That's what was weird. Yeah. And he said it felt a little bit like, you know, in Harry Potter when the Dementors come on and they're all...
Yeah.
That's how he explained it. He said, I was sort of trapped, and he said, I felt like I was in some sort of weird dream. But
that's so weird.
Nobody else was flinching. He said, I could see everybody on the train, the lights were off, but I could see this woman and no one else was... It was as if the whole of time had just gone, boom, stopped. And he still to this day, he's like, I don't know what it was. And it freaked him out. Because he came home and he didn't talk about it. Because I don't think he knew what he'd just experienced. Sometimes
I think you have to, before you can say anything out loud to somebody else, you have to try and get it straight in your head first. You have to be like, right, I need to cover all bases here. I need to make sure that everything that doesn't add up in my head doesn't really add up in real life before I start telling people.
And my brother, I'll be honest, as a person, is not someone that is that imaginative that he would make this whole thing up or go into that mindset of, oh my God, a haggard beggar woman got on the train, because that's not my brother. He wouldn't even jump straight to that conclusion. It makes me laugh because I could just imagine him sat there like, what the actual hell is happening? Who are you? Do you know what I mean? And that made me go cold, because he told me that while we were in the queue for Hex at Alton Towers in October. That was not long ago.
Oh wow!
I was like, "Are you serious?" and we're.
I would just look, and I might regret saying this. I would just love something like that to happen to me.
Yeah, I would as well.
I am so desperate for the paranormal to be real.
Yeah.
As I've told you before, this is why I always question it. This is why I'm always throwing my guard up whenever it comes to me. But I want my belief in the paranormal.
Yeah.
If and when it ever comes, I want that belief to be legit. I want it to be real. I don't, I'm not just going to believe something that someone tells me.
Yeah.
And I need the most solid evidence.
Yeah. Well,
possible.
This episode and that made me think about witchcraft, because I think within this whole episode there is that element of witchcraft, which I think, and I'm sure listeners would like it, I think we should look at witchcraft as a topic, because although it's not UFOs or paranormal, it's still something that is believed to this day, and people believe still happens. There's still witchcraft in the world.
Wiccan.
Yeah,
and Wiccan exists,
and it's very appreciated and respected.
People worship it. Yeah.
But there's also sides to it which, in the centuries of this, were not so kind and were seen as evil. So it was interesting, really, because it just made me sit and think about all the possibilities, and there's so much out there that's all myth or legend, but nobody, we weren't around in the times where, you did have witchcraft at this level, or was it real? What I mean? How scary was it? So, it just made me think a little bit about it, because it's something to debate, really.
Maybe one day, if and when we start a Patreon page, when we've got enough listeners on here that we might be able to start monetizing it and start making a Patreon page, we can start as a side project reviewing movies, scary movies. I think we mentioned this before anyway.
Yeah.
One of those films can be the Blair Witch Project. I've never seen that.
That is scary. That film
I've never seen it.
Witchcraft in general has a very scary side to it. So that's why this ride is so scary. And this is why this whole story is scary with Hex. And I think, which is why at the very end, where Stuart was on his own and Carl was on his own.
This whole section, my heart was in my throat.
I mean, Stuart did not have as bad of a time as Carl, but it was the bang. Obviously something hit him, and then the door closed. And that was it. That he called it quits then, didn't he? Because
I've written down bang. Literally just the word bang.
Yeah.
Really startled me. That took me by surprise, and that was Stuart's side. Because I know I've talked before on this podcast about not liking it when a paranormal TV show is too cinematic. This entire section of this show was very cinematic, but in the most perfect way.
Yes, they didn't.
The way they would cut between Stuart's camera and Carl's camera was so clever, especially after Carl had his major incident.
Oh yes.
And I just put Carl just got KO'd out of nowhere.
Literally.
And you sort of heard him. There was like a little. I'm not going to call it a squeal, but he audibly gasped, and then boom, he was on the floor. And then it was cut in between Stuart shouting for Carl, and then it would go to Carl's camera, and you'd hear Stuart again, but in the distance. And I thought that was so clever. It was very Paranormal Activity.
Do you know what
style? Like found footage horror film style.
And what
it was really well done.
What I looked at afterwards, which I didn't think about when I was watching it, but afterwards, and I went cold thinking about it. So Stuart said about not to harm him. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's when the second door slam happens, And then after that is when Carl is assaulted.
Mm-hmm.
So it's as if this spirit, and this is what David was talking about before, as in it won't happen and then all of a sudden it will. It's as if they've gone to the spirit, don't hurt me, and he's gone, all right, I'll go and hurt somebody else. So that's like the door slam, he leaves, and then Carl is assaulted. And I just thought, wow, that genuinely is, like he said, please don't harm me, and he's gone, no probs.
Yeah.
And the spirit's gone and he's hurting because, I mean, at first I thought, oh, right, he's just fell over. But then the lump on his head was huge.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody would purposely smack their head on a wall for content, in all honesty.
I 100% agree with you. But could it be he's walking around in a dark room?
Yeah.
Could it just be that he's tripped and it's accidental and he has genuinely just twatted his head on the wall or on the floor or something?
Kieran says there is, because he was talking about it at the end, and he said there's a possibility that he did see something in the doorway, which is what he said, and then he's made himself scared and he's tripped and fell.
Yeah.
But I don't think the speed in which it happened, I wish the camera had just been pointing in the direction at that time that we wanted it to be. Because if it had been pointing at the doorway, his reactions just clearly weren't quick enough. We might have seen possibly a blur or even just a knock happen, but because of the way the camera was angled, because in real time he's gone gone. Yeah. So
I will say, let me just say this as well. I've actually been wanting to say this for the whole episode. Watching this episode of Most Haunted was so fucking nostalgic. I really, really adored watching this. Not even just like, because sometimes it gets to the point where I'm like, oh, I haven't watched the episode yet. I need to watch it. And I need to sit and I need to make notes. I was watching this episode last night, and I was just, every 2 minutes, I was just like, I fucking love this. I fucking love this. I fucking
brilliant.
love this. But the reason this is nostalgic for me is because I've mentioned this before. Most Haunted was the TV program that got me into this kind of thing. Really got me into the paranormal. I literally barely even knew it existed until I watched Most Haunted. And this episode of Most Haunted is from the era of when I first started watching it, like my early to mid-teens.
Yeah.
And all the way through, I made some of the notes that I was making wasn't even about the evidence. One of them, I've just written, CGI blueprints. This is so fucking nostalgic. I forgot about that.
Yeah, when they show you where they are.
When they would show you whereabouts in the building they are.
But I like that.
Show you the blueprint. I love that.
I like that.
And it made me feel so warm inside. And it's stuff like that. So I've prefaced this by saying that because I love the show. I loved this episode. But one thing that I would change about Most Haunted is that they carry their cameras vlog style.
Yeah.
So often. Like the camera is facing their face.
Yeah.
To capture legitimate evidence, you need to be aiming your camera at where the action is. So unless something is being thrown at your face, your camera needs to be facing away from you. That's my only thing I would say.
That's why we've missed that bit of evidence, because the camera wasn't facing the right way.
Because he's clearly seen something, but we haven't.
Yeah, but like Most Haunted, like I'm just going to say it now, is the GOAT. It is, and it is the OG.
It is.
And it is what has made and inspired so many recent programs in America mainly. We don't get as many here in the UK.
Ghost Hunter programs would not be as popular as they are today if it wasn't for Most Haunted.
And shout out to them. Honestly, it's like fantastic, because even today, like watching an episode that was from years ago now, it was still good to watch. Like it was gripping. It had evidence, and what I love about this is they give evidence and they justify it.
Yeah.
They don't just go, oh, and scream, and they they even they say, oh, well, that could have been, or maybe not.
Yeah.
You know, they don't believe
and I love
everything
that they've
is
always
that.
got a skeptic there as well.
Yes, because it's real. They are trying to prove that there's paranormal activity in these places, but are very on board with the fact that it might not be, which is why they bring a skeptic, to also bring them back to that realization of when they're experiencing that fear, I think.
Yeah.
You know. But let me ask you now, is Alton Towers haunted?
Based on the evidence provided in the show, I have written no.
You've written no?
Yeah. Very much the skeptic in me always coming through.
Yeah.
I've backed it up. I'm not just saying it for no reason. Because to be fair, I could have said yes with a lot of the stuff that was happening, but I've put no because most of the evidence was either verbal from the psychic or just generic knocks and bangs that could have been caused by, lots of different things. But for me, the amount of coincidental / verbal / explainable things that happened outweighed the things that I couldn't explain.
Yeah.
So for me, it is a no.
Yeah.
Although I loved the episode and I love this show.
Yeah.
What about you? Do you think Alton, based only, can I just say, based only on the evidence in this TV program, not taking your brother's story into account or anything like that, based only on the evidence in the show?
Yes.
Okay.
Because they've married up things that were said before they got there. So about the things being thrown, things were being thrown.
Yeah.
You could see the fear on their faces and the knocking in the kitchen. There's no explanation for it, and it was like the energy. Even though I wasn't there with them, I could sense it. I thought there's so much activity in this place, and it is just a shame because if you could walk round there now, next time I visited, I would take the time to go and just walk around these rooms because you used to be able to go into the banquet hall and just go for a wander and have a look, but now you can't because it's just condemned, and I think they're trying to fix it. But the minute you're allowed back in there, I will be going for a walk.
Yeah. I did also write, this was earlier on in the episode, one of the workers said, if you came at night, it's a different experience.
Well, that's the thing.
I've just written, that really makes me want to go at night.
Yes, but they don't let you. And the thing is, they've never, ever, in the last sort of 10 years, done any haunted nights. They used to do them. I think you used to be able to pay and do during the closed season, not during the open one, you could go and spend the night.
Yeah.
But obviously, currently, they don't allow that. So if they ever did, then I would be intrigued because it seems like it would be a terrifying experience, to be honest.
Yeah. Shout out Alton Towers or anyone that works there, anyone that could get us in there. See if you can get me and Chloe in there to do some kind of walkabout. I'll see if I can lock her in a room for a short while. See what she does. See what she does to me.
I would have a panic attack, absolute panic attack, if I was in a room on my own. I'd have to bring a team of 10. I'll be honest. I would have to. I couldn't. It's too.
A team of 10. Would you not just go in with me? I think that would make for good watching. Just two paranormal investigators, one who deeply believes and one who deeply does not.
Yes. But I would absolutely need a bloody hard drink after it, I think.
Okay.
Because there's some places that I'll investigate and I go, yeah, okay. There, I genuinely believe would be possibly traumatizing.
More so, do you think, than like the likes of 30 East Drive?
Yeah, because 30 East Drive is a small house where, yes, there's things going on, but you're talking like 11 spirits in a massive, massive place where you could easily get lost, for example. You could easily get shut in a room. You could easily not find your way back. Do you know what I mean? If you get split up in there, you are alone.
I see what you mean.
Whereas in 30 East Drive, if you're upstairs and someone's downstairs, you can shout and someone's there. Whereas, like what happened to Carl and Stuart, they got completely split off, and then he couldn't find him, and he was passed out in a corridor.
Yeah.
So That's why. That's the only reason why. It's not the investigating. It's just the size of the place and the possibility of the unknown.
So then, of the evidence in the show that made you believe that Alton Towers is real, what would you say is the best piece of evidence?
My best piece of evidence was the knocking in the kitchen and the throwing of the stones, because they were, especially the stones one, because I'd already, before watching this, done research about things that people have experienced at work there and have guessed, and then it happened on the show. So I thought, okay, it's married up. Yes, I know someone could have thrown something, but for me, that's a bit of evidence that marries up.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you there. I've written, assuming it's not fake and none of the crew are doing it, some of the stone throwing is perplexing. It's too heavy to just be falling stones, because that's something that Kieran said in his sort of roundup at the end of the show, is that obviously it's an old building, it's deteriorating. It could just be that stones are falling, or bits of rock are sort of chipping away from the bricks. Some of the stones that we heard, there was real force behind them.
Yeah.
So I don't think they would just be falling stones. I think they would have had to have been thrown. So yeah, that was for me the best evidence for stone throwing.
Yeah. Well, some of them were launched like literal cricket bowling force. Yeah. Like it was. Yeah, I mean, next time I go in there, I am going to be on my guard now. Like.
But again, that's because it's the power of suggestion. Yeah.
It would be interesting though if I went in there and talked about this in there, whether something would happen.
You never know. You never know until you get there. Well, we need to get there.
Next time I go to Alton Towers and queue for Hex, I will try it.
Do it. Okay, and what do you think was the worst piece of evidence?
The worst piece of evidence for me was... Let me find... I wrote that down. It was potentially just when the medium was talking. Because, I mean, okay, but I can't see that. So, I cannot see the man covering his eyes. So, for me, that's the worst piece of evidence.
Yep, and again, me and you have completely lined up on this. I've put literally worst piece of evidence. Anything that the psychic said, it isn't evidence and it isn't backed up by anything.
Yes, that makes it the worst piece of evidence.
Yep, for me, personally. And finally, what would you say is the scariest moment in the show?
When Stuart and Carl were split off.
Yeah.
Horrendous.
That was... my heart was in my mouth when that was happening.
And I think it was scary because it's something you wouldn't want to do yourself.
Oh, you wouldn't want it to happen to anyone?
No. So, yeah. Awful.
And I feel bad. Whether it was... whether it was a demon or a ghost that hit Carl, or whether he's just simply tripped. You don't want anyone to get hurt on any kind of investigation.
No.
That is, I can understand why you've said that. Scariest moment for me is when I paused the video and accidentally caught a demon.
Yeah.
I will upload that video to Instagram. This goes really nicely into the little section where I tell you that you can get in touch with us. So yeah, I'll put the photo of the paused face of Kieran O'Keefe. It was completely accidental. I literally paused the screen because I wanted to read what it said at the bottom, and I immediately got startled by what I saw. It was terrifying, and I had to be like, oh, wait, what? Is that Kieran? And then I pressed play and realised it was Kieran, and everything was fine. But at first, I was literally, my heart exploded. So you'll be able to see that picture on Instagram at paratvpod. That is also the handle for our TikTok page. You can follow us on those bits of social media. If you've got any of your own opinions on this episode of Most Haunted, which you can watch on, if you just Google it, I found it on Dailymotion. I don't know where Chloe watched it. YouTube, lovely. So yeah, you can find it. I looked for it on Pluto TV.
Yeah, it's not. They only had up to
because that's where we normally watch Most Haunted, but
season 15.
Yeah, it's not on there at the minute, unfortunately. But we did manage to find it. If you want to make your own opinions on the episode known to us, or if you have any of your own paranormal stories or just opinions on the podcast itself, let us know. Paranormaltvpod@gmail.com. Drop us a 5-star review. That would be really lovely of you if you could do that. It costs you absolutely nothing, but it means the absolute world to us. And if on whatever podcasting app you are listening on, if you can leave a comment, and maybe it'll get read out on the podcast. Who knows? And just before we do go, I do have some shout-outs to do. I made a video. Help My House is Haunted is a paranormal TV investigation show. It's what we will be investigating next week. And I put a video out asking people for the wrong answers only. Help my blank is haunted. Fill in the blank. Give us your wrong answers only.
Yeah.
Some of these were dreadful, so I have only got 3 shout-outs this week. Few and far between, unfortunately. So, are you reading them now as we're looking?
The spiritual bailiff, I would assume.
Help, that is that.
My Bondoogly is haunted.
I literally screenshot that as my first. As my first shout out. Yeah, the spiritual bailiff. They are friends of ours.
Yep.
We follow them, they follow us. We support each other.
Yep.
Paranormal lovers of the paranormal. Thank
Funny.
you, because we love a weird and wonderful, like a
I love
properly
that.
weird and wonderful one.
That's funny.
I don't know what a Bondoogly is.
No,
but
I thought I pronounced it wrong.
the spiritual bailiff's Bondoogly is haunted. Kia Morrissey said, "Help, my toes are haunted." I don't know if it was all of them or just a handful of them or a footful. And then, have you got any more you want to say?
Help, my ass is haunted. I like that one.
Do you like that one? I didn't save that one.
That was Hauntings in History. Just shouting it out.
Lovely. I didn't save that one personally.
I did.
The last one I saved was Help, my wig is haunted.
That's a good one.
It just reminded me of Cousin It from the Addams Family.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thanks for listening. We'll see you next week when we'll be talking about an episode of Help, My House is Haunted.
Yeah.
I almost forgot what it was called then. I was going to... Help, My Bondoogly is Haunted. And I do believe is it season 4, episode 5?
Yes, it is.
Season 4, episode 5 of Help, My House is Haunted. Watch it. It's on Discovery Plus if you want to make your own opinions on it before you listen to what we have to say about it. And all that's left to do now is to leave you in the capable arms of Chloe Parr as she takes us out of this week's episode. Chloe.
Yeah. Well, thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed. Now remember, Alton Towers may be haunted, but don't worry, most of the ghosts are only here for the ride. Good night.